Open Intro, where we talk to leaders about who they are, what they are, and the impact that they make in their world of business. Today, I'm pleased to be speaking with the eminent Amit Malik. Hi, Amit. How are you, sir? You well?
Hi, Joel. I'm very good. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. And hello and a warm welcome to all your listeners.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I know you're extremely busy, so thank you for your time to spend with us today. What we really want to do, Amit, is just really get under the bonnet, if you like, in terms of who you are. Obviously, the profile you have on Open Intro is there for people to see. But what we really want to do is really understand who you are, why you do what you do, and how we really drive that forward. So please tell us about yourself.
Well, what do I say? Let me start by saying, I'm someone who's always taken a leap of faith into the unknown in my career. So kind of pivoted 3 times. Personally, I'm someone who believes that as long as you know the next 2 steps in your career, you have faith in yourself, you should move ahead and take that. Experience-wise, over 25 years of experience. Currently, I work for a blockchain technology company. I do a regional role as the president, been the CEO and managing director for a life insurance company. A board member, tech investor, done various roles. But things that I focus on or I like is, I think agility to challenge the status quo within and outside the organization. How does one enable innovation? And I typically believe that as leaders, it's your job to kill complexity and clear the roadblock for your team members and the organization. Some things I believe in, which is also there, which I put out on my LinkedIn, is leadership is a choice, not a position. And I'm someone who likes to build genuine connections. And I like authentic conversations, which are very into the present. So that's kind of me from a professional standpoint. A personal side, I stay in Gurgaon in New Delhi in India, and that's about me. So yes.
Thank you for that. I think you said something really poignant there about leadership. Leadership is a choice. Tell us a little bit more about why that stat is so important to you and how that's related to your actual career. Any examples of how you've had to really utilize your leadership in that way, but why is it a choice first and foremost, I guess, is my opening question.
See, a lot of people believe that you need to have a team to be a leader, right? That's why it's called the ship, right? But I believe that you can be a leader in any situation. You don't need 10 people following you to be a leader, right? But when there are 10 people who are following you, it's a choice that you make to stand up and be their leader. You have to come to the party, as I always say. Sometimes we all get positions in an organization, in a hierarchy, which are managerial positions. But that don't make you a leader. That's why I say leadership is a choice. Being a leader is a choice, and then leadership is a choice. And it's a choice that you take on. You can continue to be a manager without being a leader all your career. So I think that's where I differentiate. It's never that title. It's about your own decision to say, I am going to lead. When I talk about being a leader, I think for me, it is how do you get people to do their best work every day that they come into work. Yeah. That's for me is being a leader or being a leadership. And that's why I say it's a choice that you make. It's how you take away the roadblocks. I've had opportunities to demonstrate leadership when I was a single man in a single man role, an individual contributor role. I've had opportunities to demonstrate leadership when I was leading an organization. So I think various stages of career, one gets opportunities. It's about how you seize them, how you stand up and say, this is where I'm going to make a difference.
Yeah, I hear
so
that.
Just to give you an example, when I started my career, I was in a sales role, which was an individual HR person in a sales organization.
That's quite interesting.
Right? And where everyone, and I was very green behind my ears, just started my career, never worked in an organization. And everyone thought, and this is way back in 99. So, everyone thought HR's role was to come in and, do the normal admin stuff, recruitment, performance management, kind of hold that process, especially at a junior level. And I took that initiative at that time to bring in an assessment center and kind of develop people through assessment centers in a sales organization, right? And that sparked from a thought that why do great salespeople don't make good
Why
managers?
is that? What was the difference?
Whenever we would promote a good, because every time that we would promote a good sales person to be into a managerial role, 6 out of 10 times that person would not succeed. That individual would not succeed, So, and that is why I asked myself saying, that's the natural career progression. You are a salesman, you are a salesperson, and then you get into a managerial role, whether you had a unit, you had a branch, And then you have managerial responsibilities, but you're still in the sales function, but you're managerial responsibilities. And why do people
That's
fail?
right.
And that's where the whole concept of developing them beforehand to be successful in a managerial role, to discharge those responsibilities. And that's how the assessment centers came in. And
May I
that
just
whole
interject
piece
on
is
that,
struck.
Amit, because I think you make a really interesting point there, because there is a distinction between managers and leaders. And clearly it strikes me that mindset and choice is part of that difference in terms of finding who are those leaders, those who choose to be leaders. But in the sales role and in the sales function in any organization, in your experience, how have you found the ability to lead in a sales function? I.e., do you feel people have embraced that sales mentality as a leader, or do you think that they see, in general terms, they see sales as a managerial activity? You need to manage the sales process. Are good salespeople good leaders, or are they good managers?
So, good salespeople are good leaders, and they are also inspirational leaders. All good salespeople would be inspirational leaders. They are able to inspire people to to raise their ambition, to raise their targets, to achieve more, to do more. That's what a good salesperson or a sales leader is able to bring. Do they have to be a good manager in terms of fairness, in terms of process adherence? Yes, they have to be, right? They necessarily have to be. Are all of them so much focused on that? Maybe not, but it's no different from any other function, that I would say. But I think you really need that whole inspiration for people to go above and beyond and do a lot more in sales, because it is also, we should not forget, Joel, sales is one function which is very tangible
Yeah,
in an organization, which is very, very number driven. 90 to 95% of the organization is very number driven. Everything can be quantified into a
yeah,
number.
yeah. Interesting. I mean, that opens a side question, really, in that, in this world of numbers and world of data, in that sense, particularly with your experience of working at, I believe we worked at Aviva India previously, and kind of led the organization in that region. When you look back at your experience there, how much did numbers and data play a part with your experience there? And then what are your views on the use of technology and data in the current world now?
So numbers play a huge role in any organization, especially in insurance, because it's not only about the sales. The numbers also play a big role in your financial planning, in your reserving, because in an insurance organization, you have to equally reserve for the doomsday
Yeah.
scenario. Where you can see the money on your balance sheet, but you can't use it because of the nature of the
Mm.
organization. So numbers play a very, very big role. I came from an HR background, and when I moved to do the chief operating officer role and then the CEO role, actually one of the things that I had to be very, very conscious about is for people to realize that I
Yeah,
understood my
yeah.
numbers, because HR is not seen as a very number
No,
friendly
no, not at all.
function. But I had to fight that mindset that this HR guy knows his
Yeah. Did you
numbers,
feel much challenged
right?
with that? Did you
And that
find that
was
you
one
had
of the
a Did
challenges
you
that
find
I
much challenge with
transitioned.
that? Do you find much conflict with that because you had that HR background, but you knew the numbers? Did you find much challenge?
Yes, I did. But because I was an HR head for 5 years in the organization, people knew that I had the I had knowledge of the numbers. But I actually had to go and prove them that I not only know my numbers, I can also make the
Yeah.
numbers work. I can make the numbers happen. Right. So that was a big challenge. A lot of people would say, "Oh, he's an HR guy. He talks very well. He motivates very well. His leadership style is great. He can keep the team engaged, but can he deliver the numbers?" So that was a mindset that I entered into the role. But what is life without a challenge?
Well, I mean, on that, it's quite interesting because you've actually bring on to my next question there. Because as a leader with your global experience that you've had, I'm sure you've had multiple challenges. Challenges every single day. I guess as a leader, those challenges force you to look at your own character, your own skills, your own ability. There might be times of self doubt. There may be times of questioning. I mean, how have you dealt with dealing with challenges as a global leader? How have you dealt with that personally? Because sometimes as leaders, you hide, I'm not saying you have particularly, but as global leaders, you can, because the responsibility that and the role that you have, it's game face on all the time, but you're a human being. So how have you dealt with those challenges as a leader at that level?
So two ways. See, and I'll answer this question in two parts. One, how I've dealt with this as Amit and an individual, and then as a professional, right? So when you look at yourself as a professional or a leader who's dealing with, you start to ask about the unsaid. You start to seek about the why. Why is this challenge happening? What is the unsaid? See, what is evident, everybody can see, but there is always a hidden element to that event happening, to that challenge occurring. You try and go down to the bottom of that and understand the why behind it, as to why is it happening? What is it that we have missed? Why are we in this situation? So that you correct it from there, and you also don't repeat it going forward, and you take your learning from there as you solve for it. That's one. So I will always go down to, no matter what has happened, you ask things, once you've dealt with it, or while you're dealing with it, if you can't find a solution, you go to the why. Personally, I get up every morning, Joel, I look in the mirror, and no matter how bad my yesterday has been, I look, smile, and say, let's go conquer the world today.
Yeah, I like
And 4 out of 5 days, it works. On the fifth day, even this doesn't work.
Yeah, not every day you can look in the mirror and get that positive response, right? There's some days, all right,
Yeah.
you feel mentally tuned in, but the reality is that, there is a real life you have to deal with. I know,
Yeah.
particularly, when I look at my own journey as an entrepreneur, you don't get into entrepreneurship with a sense of, how can I describe it? You believe that success is going to happen, but the reality is that there are challenges every single day, and you're constantly questioning and trying to find solutions to meet those challenges. And as an entrepreneur, when you look at yourself in the mirror, you have to question yourself as to whether you're willing to face these challenges that you're going to face today. And you always smile and you always say yes, because it's about the purpose, it's about what you're trying to achieve. But the reality is that there are some days when you're just like, can I really do this? Can I really get past this hurdle? And particularly if it's things that are outside of your control as well, you're having to respond to things. You always want to be proactive, but there are times where you have to be reactive to these changes so that you can then get to that next level. So I completely hear you, completely hear you.
I have a secret to that. So whenever things are beyond my control and I'm on the fifth day where looking into the mirror doesn't motivate me, I have a small side conversation with my God. And I kind of park it with him and say, I've left it to you. I've done everything that I can, or I'm trying to do everything that I can. And I leave it in that. I will leave it with you to kind of make things better. And I leave it there. And it kind of gives me personally a lot of relief to say, share it with somebody, and I've left it.
That's a really great point again. I think when people talk about having faith, whether it's in yourself or whether it's in an unknown entity, then if you like, people can turn their nose up at that because they think it's all about religion. But I think it's very important to share. It's very important to have this sense of peace and contentment that you get by handing over the problem. I myself, I'm definitely deeply spiritual in that sense, and I 100% believe in God. And when I look at the pattern of things that have happened on my own journey, it can only have been God that allowed these things to happen in the way that it did. Things I could never have foretold, things that I thought were going to happen that didn't, things that happened outside of my control. But there's a link and there's a combination between all of those things. And I always feel like there's always an option, even if I don't see what that option is. There's always an option. There's always something that can happen. There's always a door that can open. There's always a step that can be taken. But in the reality of day to day, as leaders, it's often difficult to see that through all the time, knowing that you have the responsibility of having to see it through all the time. Does that make sense? Especially when you've got people that are
Yeah.
that you're responsible for and are responsible to you as well. You have to make sure you're always one step ahead, even if you don't know what one step ahead looks like. So I completely hear that. Sometimes you just have to just hand it over and go with what transpires, and have faith that it's the positive way, that you'll always be able to get to where you want to get to. Just slightly shifting direction a little bit, because you talked about your career in insurance. You also mentioned that you're now working within the world of blockchain. Why the switch? What made you want to make that move into that space, and how have you found working in that space, given your background and your experience?
Well, the switch happened when I left insurance. I wanted to take a break, which was supposed to be longish, but then serendipity happened, and what's became calling. I always wanted to work in a new age tech organization, so it was like okay. But when I looked at the opportunity, I didn't know anything about blockchain or much about crypto at that time. I'd read what everyone else read, so very very basic. But then I thought that was an interesting opportunity, and I wanted to, the learner in me kind of always there said, okay, let's go learn something new. It's not something that one can learn. So I went into that whole learning journey. Today, I undertook that. I think the role gave me, the sector was very interesting. When I joined this space in 2022, October, blockchain was was one of the sunrise sectors of the future. Right, it still has a lot of potential, and payments is something that on blockchain I personally feel has a lot of future. When you look at that category, and that's what interested me to say, okay, let's kind of see what we can do here. And it was a path which I knew is not going to be easy, but I also knew that it's about building for the future. So we are building a highway or the rails for someone to come and drive in the future, and that's always an exciting part to do. Paths not traveled much, but interesting. A journey that kind of helps you to, as I say, legacy is a very strong word, and that's not what I was looking for, but at least helps you to build something that is new and that can have a lot of future
No, I hear that. I
benefits.
think having a mission is very, very important. Having a very clear understanding to the why and then how you're going to achieve that why is important. And I think legacy is possibly the right word because, legacy isn't just about leaving this whole grand opportunity for somebody else down the line. It might be just something small that gives them the opportunity to build upon it in the new world that they're in at the time when they interact with what you've left. So I think legacy is absolutely right because for the times that we're in, you're doing the best for creating and leaving innovation for the future to take place. And you mentioned innovation earlier as one of the areas that you're really keen and interested in. I mean, what does innovation really mean to you in the work that you do?
That's a very tough one, because innovation is a very, very wide word, as I said. It's very broad, it's very wide. But for me, it's multiple things. It's creating something, right? Building on someone who's already done something there. So it's not about just, it's about building on something, and it's slowly and gradually making a big difference at some point in time. So you keep at it until the manifestation is something that becomes a game changer.
I like that kind of incremental change. As often, and you're right, it is a broad concept and a broad term. And I guess when people often think about innovation, they immediately would think tech, for example. But you're right, it is a progressive, incremental thing because the innovation you do, 0 to 2, that's part of a bigger chain of innovation to take place, and one builds on top of the other. And you're right, whether it's people, processes, systems, what have you, innovation can happen in small parts, it can happen in large leaps. And I think for many entrepreneurs these days, it strikes me that innovation needs to be part of their roadmap for their business, regardless. Partly because we're living in what we would call a global world. So, your competition is no longer the person down the street. Your competition could be someone in their bedroom on the other side of the world. So your global environment is both global and local, and connecting those together means you always have to be innovative. You always have to be on the front foot.
I absolutely agree with you, Joel. You don't know where your competition, who is going to emerge as your competition, right? And I think I always believe that. And what you see as competition typically is not competition in the true sense that they don't put you out of business. The competition that puts you out of business, kind of surprise you where it comes from. And my favorite example is, if you look at when I started my career, the big thing was those Sony and Nikon and Canon cameras and digital recorders, right? And no one believed that a mobile that was still finding its feet in 2000 and early 2000s now would emerge to be their biggest company.
Actually, quite interesting. I mean, have you seen other examples of industry-leading innovation that you've experienced in your work? Has been, even if it was in the insurance space or prior, are there any examples of industry-changing innovations that you have been involved in?
So I've personally not been involved in when you say industry changing innovations, but yes, innovations within the industry where one can always look at is, you look at how, when you look at insurance industry, look at how the variables and the data is impacting and changing the underwriting process.
Yeah, tell me more about that. Tell me a bit more.
Yeah. So, you look at it, earlier an underwriter would only have your medical test to go through, where you would answer your questions to say how many cigarettes do I smoke, if I'm a smoker, non-smoker, alcohol, non-alcohol, and your medical your basic medical reports to underwrite your whole life. And that's what the industry was, or the life insurance industry was always dependent on. But now you look at how much of wearable data that you have that an underwriter has now available to be able to make those decisions about an individual, or how much data an individual has got about his or her own health to be able to to be able to share your sleep patterns, heartbeats per minute, consistency over time. Similarly, when you look at, general insurance outside of life, look at the claim settlement process. Or if, let's take car. Earlier, you could have, if your car got banged up, you'd have to take it to the workshop. The person would come assess. Now you can just do it all on the mobile phone. You just take a video, assessment gets done, your claim gets settled, the car gets repaired. Or you look at the risk in driving. Earlier there were certain patterns, so if you were 25, you bought a Ferrari which was red in color, you would be the highest risk rated person, right? Now today you have gadgets that you can put in your car as you drive. They kind of give you your risk score over a period of 12 months. So when you go back to go back for your renewal of your car insurance premium, you can always say, listen, I'm a 9 on a 10. Or so that means I'm such a great driver, and that lessens down the risk. And the company then has solid data to discount your risk premium and to give you a better option. So look at how technology started to play, and this has led to innovation of products. This has led to innovation of claims process. This has led to change in how you look at the whole data piece in an insurance sector, and one could go on in various other sectors. But look how it's changing the whole consumer experience, and also helping the organizations to do better financial management.
Yeah, that's
Stuff.
important. I think, from a fintech perspective, we're absolutely in the financial risk space, if you like, using data to help organizations. We certainly have seen the shift in terms of lending underwriting in that sense within the SME market. But I guess there's similarities around insurance, and it strikes me that the innovations are just going to get even faster. As technology becomes a little bit more commoditized and the price of creating these effective solutions becomes cheaper, there's going to be even a greater sense of innovation. And I guess being in the payment space, there's a high level of innovation taking place there, and I guess hence why you're in there, particularly around the blockchain piece as mentioned earlier. But have you got any thoughts on maybe the future of innovations in the payment space? Just any overarching trends that you're seeing or areas of interest that you think people should be aware of or think about?
Well, if I was to take, if I was to look at into I think what is going to happen is, especially in the financial services space, you will see a lot of AI and blockchain synergy that's going to happen. AI is going to give solutions, and blockchain is going to be that moment of truth where where you start to check on AI. See, AI comes with its positive and with its negatives. All of those information that is on AI, when you want to check that in a financial services space, you will rely on blockchain. Will be that master certifier, as you may say, or that moment of truth when it comes to innovation. So that is one. I think the payment itself is going to change. You look at India. India's got UPI now. Wherever you actually can get away without having cash in India.
It seemed to just cut out there momentarily, so apologies for
Now that's
about.
okay. I can
Uh,
I can I can go back.
yeah, so sorry.
Yeah.
As just before it went off, you were talking about blockchain being the master certifier of AI. So
Yes.
please continue.
And I
Sorry.
was I was giving an example, and I was saying, if you look at India today, with our UPI payment systems and the way
Yeah.
we progress, you can actually visit India and not have cash as long as you have UPI, and you can do cashless transactions. Right? For us, when I leave home, if I have no cash in my wallet, that's not a problem. I can pay for the cab. I can pay at the restaurant. I can pay to a street side vendor. I can come back home. I can pay anywhere I want, and I can come back home without utilizing cash. I have friends who have forgotten how their ATM cards look like, or where they've kept their ATM cards. Right? Everyone
Crazy.
takes a UPI as, or unified payment instrument, as they are called. So so that's similarly. Look at, the question is going to come is, why should I carry a physical credit card in India? You still have to carry, because we don't have Apple Pays and that. But look at that physicality. Today you even get that card, but why should you even get that physical credit card? Why should the company pay money to give you a physical credit card? People are still doing it. But my whole question is why? Why not just share a virtual card with anybody? They can put it on their phone and they can put it on their wallets and they can use it wherever they want to. It's any which ways it's touch. So what do I get? Yeah, the limits are there, and you can't tap, and because there are restrictions that you can only tap this much or you can only do online this much. And today I understand why they are, and I respect that, and I'm glad that they are there. Don't get me wrong, but I think with the risk profile, the security systems that will get upgraded, all of those innovations will start to come in. At some point, as I see it, people will use digital currencies to buy a cup of coffee, in Starbucks or a coffee chain to spend, because that whole change is already happening in different parts of the world. But once that whole change comes together and it will manifest in the majority, that will start to happen. So payments is set to change a lot. But the beauty with the financial services is no matter how much it changes, the bedrock always remains the same, right? The risk assessment, the security, the pillars that hold that are always the same. And with every advance in regulation, with every advance in technology, those pillars get more and more strengthened, which is a very, very good thing. So
I think that's very important. You can't build a house on poor foundations, right? Or you can't build a house on quicksand. So I think having those key pillars is essential for innovation. Because I think a lot of the times when people talk about innovation, they think about disrupting the whole status quo. But from what I'm hearing you say, you need that balance. You can't have all the creativity and the new way of working without having solid foundations. But those foundations themselves could also be innovated.
yes,
But they are pillars nonetheless. You need both. And I think in most industries, not just financial services, but most industries are being affected by innovative ways of working, and technology being a primary a root of that. But the foundations are still the same. You still need solid foundations. When people talk about AI is going to take your jobs, etc., it depends on the job you're doing, number one. But number two, AI becomes that enabler for change. Blockchain will be an enabler for change and all these other innovations, but you still need that solid grounding.
yeah, no, I've talked about this whole AI taking jobs away. I World Economic Forum said, gave some data. Personally feel that AI will AI will create more jobs than it takes away. So World Economic Forum says, I think in the next couple of years it will take 85 million jobs, but it also says it will create 97 billion jobs. But I think, yeah, with AI, it's going to happen is it's not about the jobs going away. The jobs will transform. And how much equipped are we, or the skills that we have to be able to be eligible for the new jobs or the transform jobs? I think that's the secret. So people will not be without jobs. They may not have skills to do the jobs that are required of them when the job transforms. And
Really
I think
good point.
acquiring those skills today is future proofing your jobs too.
I think that's a really great point, Amit. It's a really great point. You won't lose the job, but your job will transform. And have you got the skills to? Yeah, I resonate with that. I think it's very important. I think on a global scale, particularly when it comes to roles that are in impactful spaces, such as like ESG and sustainability, for example, you've got the transformation of those roles, but you've also got the kind of complete change in the way in which whole industries will operate and work. So there's a transformation at the macro level and the micro level of the individual and their job roles as part of that macro environment. And so I think you're absolutely right. It's what are the skills that you need now, but what are the skills that you need for tomorrow? Because transformation is going to require you to be ahead of the curve. Because quite frankly, it's got to happen. Transformation is going to happen one way or the other, regardless of what industry you're in. You can't stay the same. Stagnation is actually going backwards. So I totally hear you that. And I think maybe one of the biggest challenges for leaders is how do they help deploy the right level of skills development into their teams to be ahead of that curve? Would you agree on that? Or
I agree. I absolutely agree. I think the change is already underway. Whoever is upskilling themselves, they will the one who will survive this wave.
so as we begin to think about closing today's interview, Amit, I'd like to really start asking you to think about a kind of a closing thought, because you have such a wide range of experience, and we didn't want to go into too much today. We want the viewers to kind of get in contact with you and learn more and research you more. But you shared some really great insight into the changing face of leadership, into innovation, into trends, into transformation, to skills development. But if you had a closing thought for leaders or those who are interested in learning more about yourself and I guess the areas that you work in, now, what advice would you give them in terms of their businesses now? What kind of closing thought would you like to share with?
I think I'll give them the advice that I'll give them is one, stay curious. That's one skill that will always help you, help you and hold you in good stead as the world is changing. So stay curious. Second, be aware that your competition is going to come from an area which is going to surprise you. So that's my second learning. And I think the third thing that I always tell everybody is that develop people, develop your teams, develop people. The more you develop them, the more they stand by you in the terms of in hard times to be able to deliver the purpose of the organization.
Yeah, that's a real powerful there. I actually like that. Stay curious, that enables you to be ahead of the curve. You're always actively looking for where change is going to come from. And competition can come from any angle, but if you're staying curious, you'll be able to adapt and flex and be agile to where that competition comes from. But I think your final point is actually the most important. It is always about people, so make sure you're developing people and supporting people and investing in people. So I think three thoughts in one make absolute sense. So curiosity will keep you ahead of the competition, but it's your people that's going to drive the opportunity and change. So I thank you for sharing that. And I guess finally, why should people contact you? For those who are coming to the platform at OpenIntro, why should people contact you? What would they gain from speaking with you?
That's a tough one. So let me start by saying, if you want to have a conversation on something that's troubling you, that's bothering you, or that's making you uncomfortable, book that slot. We'll have that conversation. I may not have all the answers, but I will help you find those answers. That's the first part. Second part is, if you want to understand about pivoting in your career, about business transformation, charting into an unknown territory, about business processes, let's have that, book that slot. We can always talk about it. We can always have that conversation, right? And the third thing is, it'll be as you see it is what you get. So you will get an unfiltered, honest view of what I think. It's not about giving you a solution. This whole conversation is about being a lighthouse where I'll help you identify the ways or the paths, and then support you in navigating that path. That's what it is.
Fantastic. Well, Amit, I'm sure those who see your video and your clip and learn more about you will be absolutely keen to understand and talk more with you. I've certainly enjoyed our conversation. We started talking about why do you do what you do, and it's absolutely come across in that you have a passion for developing others, you have a passion for leading change, you have a passion as a leader to help people and organizations to transform. And I think in this day and age, those are some key elements that we all need to consider and to keep present and keep clear in our minds in terms of how we actually navigate through these volatile and ever-changing times of business. So I want to thank you for your time today. As I said, I know you're extremely busy, so thank you for making the time to be on today's podcast at OpenIntro, and look forward to speaking to you soon.
Thank you for having me on the show, and all those who are listening, go book that slot and let's have that conversation. Thank you, Joel.
Excellent.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Richard. You take care now. Bye-bye.